All right, and Jim, what will be more than likely our final question
You think?
was sent on Twitter using a hashtag CornyDriveThru from Corey Illingworth. Hello, Brian and Jim. The Sportster compiled a list of 9 wrestling cliches that should be done away with. And I wanted to get Jim's thoughts on whether or not he agreed. And I have a link here.
Who is the Sportster?
I don't know.
Who told this Sportster guy that he knew what 9 things needed to be done away with?
Well, I have the article here. The author is Cameron Miller. 9 wrestling cliches that need to go away. While fans are used to certain things when it comes to wrestling, the following cliches could go away, and very few people would miss them.
Okay.
Number 9, contract signings.
Well, since we see one so often now, again, I don't know how old this guy is. Maybe he's 25 or 30, and he's never actually seen it done right. When you have one every year or so for the biggest match that people are going to see and shit takes place, that draws money. When you have one for every Tom's Dick is Harry match every week or two on TV, and the same shit always happens, they need to go.
Okay. Number 8, bumps that knock out referees.
When do they do those anymore?
Watching 2 of the greatest wrestlers of all time put on an absolute classic for a half hour can be a joy. But when a referee is taken out by a simple kick or a dull punch, many fans end up groaning. Things are only made worse when the referee stays down on the canvas for a ludicrous length of time. Fans are watching world-class athletes throw the hardest hitting and most complex moves at their opponents. And while the referees aren't competitors, they are grown adults who should be able to take a little bit of punishment without falling into a short coma.
Oh, that's good. That's very good.
That is good.
Well, yes, that's what we've said. If it looks bad, then it needs to be taken out regardless. A referee bump every once in a while in the finish, if you want to draw some money and sell some tickets, you should. You should do that finish every great once in a while, and it needs to look good with the right people involved. And then the referee doesn't see whatever went on, and that's the reason for your rematch. I don't know that AEW, I think Tony Khan a while back said, well, we don't bump the referee here. Well, they did fucking last week for a minute or whatever, but it's another thing that unfortunately used to, when it was done by professionals, when it was called for by professionals and done in a sparing fashion, drew money. And now, because nobody knows how to do any of those things, you got marks on the internet writing that it ought to be abolished. Well, I can already tell everything on this list should absolutely be done in wrestling at the right time and by the right people, and it'd draw a ton of money. But everything also on this list for so long has been overdone and looked like shit by people who didn't know how to do it, that it all needs to be on the list. So there you go. What's next?
Number 7, once again, this is a list of the 9 biggest cliches that wrestling could do away with. Number 7, a big man enters a battle royal. To be fair,
what the fuck?
There always is something exciting about it. There always is something.
There needs to be a weight limit and a size limit on the battle royal. Nobody too big now. That wouldn't be fair.
To be fair, I can't read this. There always is something exciting about watching a Goliath enter into a battle royal.
You think?
The downside is that it's incredibly rare for a big man to win a battle royal style match, especially when it's something with a lot of stakes like the Royal Rumble. The issue that many wrestling fans have with that is just how much the commentators sell the arrival of a colossal competitor. They may seem like a big deal, they may even eliminate people in impressive fashion, but the chances of them actually winning are pretty slim.
Again, because everybody involved in the business is an idiot. Andre the Giant made a career for the most of the 70s of traveling from town to town just to win the Battle Royal. Even if he didn't work in the territory, unless there was somebody else in it like Dusty in Florida or whatever. Andre would win the Battle Royal because it made sense, and that's what people came to see. However, most Battle Royals these days, they were never a lot of fun, but if work was put into them, like the Los Angeles Battle Royal, the San Francisco Cow Palace Battle Royal, etc., those were exciting and those drew money. Battle Royals everywhere originally drew money and then were done and overdone and prostituted, and the boys never liked being in them because they're difficult and it's dangerous with people all around you. And they were shits enough that people stopped coming just because it was a Battle Royal. And then Pat Patterson twisted and made the Royal Rumble, and, that was good for a while. But again, it makes a difference of who your giant is. Giant Gonzalez could have won Battle Royals for fucking 6 years every night. He wasn't going to get over because he was the shits, poor fella. He didn't know what he was doing, and it didn't work. But you could take a guy like Andre or Big Show, more modern, or whatever that's what they're trying to do with old Almost. Now he's almost ready. But it depends on the place, how the Battle Royal is structured, how often people have seen Battle Royals, and who the giant is. You can't make a blanket statement. And they should never try to do it in AEW because they've already had enough Battle Royals in their first 2 years to last for 10.
Number 6, evil foreigners.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
The overdone and occasionally offensive stereotypes that can come with the evil foreigner cliche is something that a lot of wrestling fans have been done with for a long time. While there's nothing wrong with telling a hometown hero story, the idea of having a story feature a foreign villain that's mostly only a bad guy because they aren't American isn't great. Those stories have been done well in the past, but those are often with larger-than-life characters when compared to the typically more grounded characters of the modern era of wrestling.
So the guy's saying just what I said. They used to do it right, but now they don't do it anymore because nobody's interesting. The biggest draws in the history of wrestling on the heel side were foreign menaces, all the way from the Terrible Turk in the 19-teens to the Sheik, when he was the biggest drawing heel in the wrestling business, to Hans Schmidt, when he was the first major national German heel 5 years after World War II, and he was on the Dumont Network. He was making the equivalent of $1 million a year in today's money. I could go on, but it has to be good talent, and it has to be the right fucking people that they're fucking with. But everybody always hates an outsider or a foreigner or someone who's different than they are when they are fighting someone that you like or that is like you or that you support or that is a hometown or home country hero. And anything from the Canada-US thing with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels was a very odd way of doing this, but still, someone from another country or another state or another sports team, another fucking college, those fucking assholes from the UK, not the United Kingdom, from the University of Kentucky. Every time they come play the University of Louisville, they're fucking foreigners. They're from 60 miles down the road, and we don't like those fucking Wildcats. It doesn't
CM Punk
matter.
and MJF.
CM Punk and MJF. Somebody has to be from somewhere else. Somebody has to be different. Somebody has to be not like the guy we like, and somebody has to be the antagonist. And so, yeah, we need more foreign heel. Whoever we're mad at, whether it was the Iron Sheik in the 80s and 90s, the Gulf War, whatever the fuck, whoever we're mad at is easy to make a heel out of, but it doesn't have to be a different race or a different country. It just needs to be the opposing team in some respect. And Texas hates Oklahoma and vice versa in a sports rivalry. That doesn't mean the people are going to meet at that's the state line down below Lawton and just go to slugging each other. But when an Oklahoma team comes into Texas, they're the fucking heels because they're the outsiders. Same fucking thing.
Number 5, Cameras don't exist unless they need to. There is something strange about two wrestlers having an intimate or intense standoff backstage, only to never acknowledge the fact that there is likely an entire team of people present to record the interaction. Many wrestling fans find it to be a little bit odd. Things are only made more confusing for the viewer when on the same show a wrestler interacts with one of the crew members.
Yes!
Whether that be by accident or on purpose. There are a lot of wrestling fans who enjoy the drama, but don't want to be treated like they are watching a daytime soap opera.
That one I'll agree with wholeheartedly, and that's something that, did you ever once in professional wrestling on any television program see, until 15 years ago, see a camera backstage, behind the scenes somewhere, shooting wrestlers, and they acted like there was no camera there at all? Did you ever see that?
Never, no.
No, that's a new thing. It's not wrestling, it's sports entertainment.
That's a Vince thing. That's a WWE thing.
It's a Vince thing, yeah. And also Vince doesn't like them to look at the camera. That's why when they're doing backstage interviews and there's an interviewer standing there and asks them a question, there's no people there. There's a camera standing there, so they're looking around. They're looking at their shoes. They're looking up in the air. They're wandering around. They don't want to look at the camera because they're told not to. It's the stupidest thing in the world. There's a television camera in front of you, and your statement is either telling your opponent or your fans something, so you look directly in the camera and make the eye contact with them, because when the people look into your eyes on television and see that you believe what you're saying, they believe you. And that's taken, not that any of the guys could probably pull it off anyway, make them believe it if they're looking in their eyes, but still that's what Vince, even in the 90s, they were telling Kevin Dunn, tell him not to look at the camera. Why? That's what he's talking to. You fucking little fucking ferret. Anyway, it drives me crazy.
Number 4, poor distractions. A distraction in the middle of a match can easily heighten the drama, but that's when they're well done. Some classic examples of what many fans consider to be bad examples are things like a beautiful woman simply existing at ringside, or, what were you going to say something?
And they jump up on the apron and you turn around and you've never seen a woman before. You just got out of solitary confinement, 25 years in prison, and you're mesmerized and your feet turn into fucking quicksand and you can't move.
Or a potential future contender sitting at ringside. While it makes sense for wrestlers to always be aware of potential attacks, being distracted by a woman because she's attractive in the middle of a match in which you're trying to destroy your opponent can make wrestling hard to bear. This guy's not too wrong on any of this stuff so far.
He's not too bad so far. It's just he's not old enough to have perspective. They still think that this is an old-time wrestling thing, which it's not, any of these things. It's just modern wrestling. With this, yes, again, the WWF style of doing things and what Rip Rogers calls as seen on TV, when you see people that are on TV in a job you want to have doing something, you naturally think that's the right thing to do and start doing it. And that's why as seen on TV has ruined the wrestling business. But distractions, yes, if they're realistically done. But when people turn and stop and are gobsmacked and slack-jawed at something that's happening and then just stand there mesmerized for seconds on end without reacting to anything because they're trying to sell it, that's fucking rotten. I've talked about when the heels are getting heat on the guy in the ring, boom, 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 and somebody's going to come out to save and their music plays and the heels stop and look. The guy's at least 80 feet. Right? They can still kick the shit out of the guy they're kept, but they stop and look when they hear the music, even before they see the guy coming to save. That's overacted, and they're putting more entertainment into it than believability, and that's where everything looks like gaga. If you're trying to get away with a crime, chances are you're going to be in a hurry. And a lot of people are not paying attention to that basic rule of thumb. Go ahead.
Number 3, everything under the ring. For years, plenty of wrestling fans have wondered exactly why there are so many strange objects for wrestlers to find under the ring. While some general objects like chairs, tables, and ladders can make some semblance of sense, things like guitars, trash cans, and the occasional stop sign absolutely do not. There are a lot of wrestling fans who are purists of the art form and believe that weapons should stay outside of most promotions except for the rare occasion. Those people tend to agree that whenever a wrestler reaches under the ring, they're likely to pull out something ridiculous. Yeah. Many people are left wondering why WWE has so many kendo sticks under the ring.
Because, again, everybody turned into a bunch of fucking marks and thinks that's what wrestling is because they saw it in the Attitude Era. Kendo sticks. If a Japanese wrestler wants to use a kendo stick, that's fine. If a guy from Cleveland wants to use a kendo stick, it doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense, does it? But anyway, yes, I agree with this also. And you can ask wrestlers in Ring of Honor. You can definitely ask them at OVW. We didn't have to fucking even go over this in Smoky Mountain Wrestling because everybody was a veteran and the thing never came up. But I have actually had to explain to guys in Ring of Honor, no, you can't use blank. Why not? Why would it be under the ring? What about that object or that implement that you want to utilize? Why would that be under a wrestling ring? Is it a toolbox or something that would be kept in a toolbox for maintenance on the ring? Is it an extra table for the announcers and timekeeper? Is it an extra chair for the security that sits at ringside? Is it an extra turnbuckle? Is it an extra board that goes under the ring? But what justification can you come up with why that would be there except it's fake and I put it there because I want to use it? Because if that's the only one you got, you can't use that fucking object. There's plenty of other things that you can use that would be in and around the periphery of a wrestling ring. Figure it out. And that's what we did. Fire extinguisher is one of my favorite ones. The Briscoes and Chris Hero and Claudio, they got a fucking huge pop in Toronto one time with a fire extinguisher because Toronto, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Toronto has not seen a lot of good old-fashioned Southern wrestling because they're in Toronto. And that may have been the first time they saw the fire extinguisher spot. But that would be under a wrestling ring, wouldn't it? But a kendo stick, 18 tables, a ridiculous amount of chairs, some of the other spurious objects that we've seen pulled out. No, it's ridiculous. And that tells people this is fake and that was put under there for the reason to be used, not this guy's lost control of himself and found the nearest blunt instrument he could pick up. That's the impression you're going for, not it's fake.
Number 2, everyone is down. There is definitely a case to be made for fans showing their respect to two performers while they take a quick breather after a sequence that took everything out of them, but that's something that isn't always earned. A moment like this can be a marvelous spectacle when done well, but it's not used all that well all that often. Two wrestlers being unable to stand after a brutal exchange in the late stages of a long match can make a lot of sense, especially when it's a hot rivalry. When a few wrestlers are having a random televised match with no build-up, that moment where no one can stand just feels cheap and cliché to many fans.
Well, I don't know what he's describing here. If it's a double knockout, that can happen in any match to anybody. Boom, and they both go down, and then somebody comes up, maybe the momentum changes, whatever. If they're laying there like Michaels used to with whoever his opponent was to milk the people to get them rumbling so he can do his nip up, and the people ain't particularly in the mood to rumble, then that's a different thing altogether. But I don't think we ought to wipe out all. I'll tell you what we ought to take out, that fucking stupid bullshit where a match just breaks down, whether it's a tag match or a 6-man or an 8-man or whatever it is, and everybody just runs in and takes turns doing their big move to a guy. And as soon as that happens and another guy runs in, does his big move to another guy, and on and on. And the referee just standing there watching. And by the time that they've finished doing 5 or 6 big moves and everybody's laid out and somebody's finally done a dive, you forget where they've tried to take you with the entire rest of the match. Who'd they get the heat on? Who made a comeback? We don't remember because we saw all this fucking mess. And you'll pop while it's in front of you because it's moves being done, but they've just negated all of the progress they made building the match from the time the bell first rang to get to a point where you want to see something happen. And then it's just bang, 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 all these fucking moves and everybody running in and out, and you lose track of everything that's been done. It's just it's just showbiz. It's just a mess.
Well, the number one cliche that could be done away with, according to the Sportster, the Spanish announce table. And this one I'm sure you could understand without me reading their description here. But
yes.
But I agree with you. What you just pointed out is one of the big cliches that has to go away. The I can't believe it, Ruby Soho fake, that person kicked out look. That has to go away. I hate that. There's a lot of cliches.
The Spanish announce table just started because Vince liked to rib Hugo. And then it went from there. And then it became a thing where people in the Attitude Era started bringing signs about the Spanish announce table. And I think they even put an announce table in one of the fucking action figure toys so you can go through the announce table. But the reason why it was always the Spanish announce table is because and this is before they'd even figured out how to gimmick the announce desks. But they would just go through them, but they couldn't take the chance of knocking the actual English language broadcast off the air on pay-per-view in those days. That would have been a goddamn disaster, and it would have cost a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't care whether the second audio track got knocked off if that happened. So they said, don't break the premier announce table, break the Spanish announce table. And then they just started doing that enough to where it became a thing, and then Vince started getting tickled by it.
Were there a lot of interactions between Vince and Hugo Savinovich?
On brief occasion. Especially poor Hugo had a bad period in his life quite a while back and made some news in Stamford for being in a place he shouldn't have been and doing things he shouldn't have been. And that's when he got released from up there. And I'm sure there was a conversation there, but most of the time, no, in the production meetings, the poor Spanish announce team just sat over in the corner and because they knew nobody knew what the fuck they were saying. Nobody in those days gave a shit. I don't even know if anybody was listening. They could have been out there saying they could have been telling the aristocrats joke in Spanish. We wouldn't have known. Nobody gave a shit. And, it's grown since then. Now at WrestleMania, where they, what was the show in
with Slapko?
It was Saudi Arabia where they had Slapko Fudd and Fubar Makafakaloob as part of one of the 18 different language announce teams they had. It was just poor Hugo and what was his Carlos Cabrera back then. English and Spanish was all you got. And they didn't give a fuck whether the Spanish got knocked off the air or not, because who's listening to it? Almost nobody in those days.
This has been 9 wrestling cliches that we don't mind getting rid of.